Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, in this video, I'll be talking about how to manage risk in different technology projects, right? So in this specific slide, in this content, I'll be talking about open banking APIs. Now, however, the same risk concept applies to different technology projects, but in this case, I'll talk about the managing risk in projects related to open banking APIs. All right, so let's jump in. So this is an example of the risk register. Now, I've been using this risk register matrix for the past, I don't know, 10, 12 years about managing all my projects across cloud projects, across data center projects, across networking projects, across ITSM projects, right? So in this case, this is an example of an open banking API risk register, which really outlines how you can classify different risks which you may encounter during your project. Now, first of all, let's go into the initial details here, right? So here the first part is you've got the category, which is you have to classify risk based on the different categories available, right? So you have people, IT, processes, organization, and facilities, right? So each type you have to specify it here, and then you describe the risk registered or the risk description associated with that specific category, okay? So for example here, then you have the risk description, which you describe the risk item. Then you discuss the impact of the risk. What exactly is the impact of the risk? Then here you describe the risk mitigation options, or the actions that you will take in order to mitigate this risk, right? What options to be able to do that you can mitigate that risk. And then you have the impact, which is you have to classify it as as low, medium, or high. And then you have the probability. How likely is this risk supposed or going to occur? What is the likelihood of this risk actually occurring? Is it low? Is it medium, or is it high? It's not showing here, sorry for that, but in the Excel sheet in the link below, you can click on the description. You'll be able to download the actual Excel sheet or the Google Sheets that will show you this same sheet. And then you have the risk score, which is the probability times the impact, which gives you a complete score of the risk. And then the likely to occur is the percentage of the risk score, which if it's 6, it'll give you 60%, and then it becomes the red. And then what is the status of this risk item? Is it closed or open, right? Which means has it been resolved or not, or mitigated against, okay? So let's go ahead and come right here. All right. So the first one, number one, is the category is organization. And the description is the API vendor does not cover one of the regulation requirements for user authentication. Now, in terms of open API, you have a lot of different options from the regulation requirements standpoint. So in this case, you want to be able to actually make sure that the API vendor, whoever's configuring the vendor for you, the vendor's configuring the OPI layer for you, or the integration points. You have to make sure that the regulation requirements actually meets the specific version. Let's say if it's OAuth or authentication of user authentication, it has to be the specific required version stated in your regulation requirements. If it's an open banking regulation requirement, then the central bank regulation requirements must be met. So the risk here is that the vendor does not meet the minimum required version of the authentication version required as stated in the regulation requirements by the regulation authority. So the impact is security threat on authentication of end users, and the application can be accessed by unauthorized users, which is the risk of attacks or cyber attacks. So what are the mitigation actions? Before going live, you want to ensure that the vendor will implement the new version of the authentication protocol and test it, and to make sure the test is successful. Or you have to delay the go live date until this specific action is met, right? Those are the mitigation options. Delay the go live date, or make sure that the vendor meets the required version upgrade for the authentication requirement. So the impact of this risk is 3, which means it's high. It's a high impact because it's going to impact your go live of your project. The probability of it to occur is actually medium, right? Because if the vendor mitigates this risk, or if you can mitigate this risk before the go live date, it does not impact your project. And then you have the risk score, which is the probability times the impact, which is 6, and then it gives you 60%, which means this is red. This is a high likely to occur. It's a red risk, which means you have to inform your management about it to make sure the mitigation options are taken into account before going live in the project. And so the status of this risk is open. Once the vendor takes action and actually resolves this point and takes the mitigation option of the upgrading the protocol required, and then we are testing it, then you see the risk is closed because it's no longer active risk on the project. Okay, this is for the first part. Now let's take a look at the second part, IT. The second part is the category of the risk is IT, information technology. The risk description is the core banking system interface will not be ready to integrate with the API vendor system, which means the core banking interface will not be ready for it to be able to link to the open API vendor's system. Now the impact of this risk is across the entire project. If my core banking system is not going to be ready to integrate with the vendor, I cannot complete any of the project. The phases of build and validate and deploy, I will not be able to complete the project. I can probably do the analysis part of the project, that's fine, but you will not be able to do any kind of build activities or validation activities on the specific project, okay? Which means your whole project will be delayed. Now, what are the mitigation actions? Create a temporary workaround interface on the core banking app that will be compatible with the core banking systems or open API provider system, or purchase and install a new middleware that will allow it to link and integrate with the core banking system, including the open vendor's API system, and test it out. So what's the impact of this risk? It's 3, it's high, it's a very high impact. The probability of it's going to occur is low. So this, of course, is subjective depending on where you are on the project. The risk score is 30%, right? So here you want to be able to understand that maybe, for example, the vendor or the vendor confirm that the core banking system interface will be ready by next month before we start the project. So it's a low risk. It's less likely to occur because you have mitigation options. If you don't have any mitigation options in place, then it's going to be a very high risk. So you have to put the probability as being medium or high, which will give it a 60%, which means it's going to be red, which means you don't have options to be able to mitigate this risk, which means you will not be able to start your project on time, okay? And the final one is basically the IT administrators are not able to be trained on the system, which is actually a people category of a risk, which means your IT administrators did not receive the training on the new system. The impact of this risk is you're unable to troubleshoot issues if they occur. You'll not be able to solve any problems if they occur on the systems, either on the website or on the servers or on the database. And of course, the risk mitigation actions is the vendor must have to ensure one option is let the vendor have on-site support for 3 months or maybe more after going live, or make sure you train your IT admin staff before going live on your project, okay? The impact is 3, it's high, it's a high risk. The probability is 2, it's a medium, and the risk score is 6, which gives it a percentage of 60%, which means it's a very high risk, which means that I have to delay my project or make sure it doesn't, I make sure I mitigate those actions, this risk mitigation before I go live on the project. All right? This sums up the 3 different risks in the risk register. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your time, and let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. And you can download this exact risk register in an Excel template or in a Google Sheet template on the bottom. You can just click on the link and you can download it and you can use it for your own projects. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I wish you the very best in managing your projects.